This one's called The Man Who Forgot to Put the Bins Out. Dave was a regular 21st century kind of guy. He liked football, manspreading, and Pornhub, and he did zippity squat fuck all around the house. He was married to Sandra, who liked Love Island, fizzy wine, and John from number 58. Dave was useless around the house and left Sandra to do the bulk of the domestic chores. But although she had fallen into the traditional role of an old-fashioned housewife, Sandra still felt modern and independent because she owned a vibrator and listened to Beyoncé while she hoovered. But despite Sandra doing all the heavy lifting, Dave did have one job, a job that was important to the ecosystem of the entire household. Every fortnight, Dave would put the bins out. And despite this being the only job he did regularly, by Jove did he let everybody know about it.
Fucking hell, it's pissing down!
He'd shout to no one in particular as he moved the bins 10 yards in light drizzle.
Bloody freezing out there!
He proclaimed to the dog as he returned from his fortnightly domestic duty, wearing nothing but a dressing gown and flip-flops while he swigged from a can of Stella. One job Dave had it easy. But then, one cold winter's morning, Dave's life was to change forever. He'd had a busy weekend, drinking steadily while watching Marvel movies and scratching his bollocks. He went to bed that night without a care in the world. The cheese from his extra-large stuffed crust Dominoes whirling around in his tiny mind, causing his subconscious to weave dreams so vivid they felt just as real as the putrid stench that often emanated from his nighttime ale farts. That night, as he snored his cock off next to his long-suffering wife, he dreamt he was a superhero, flying high above the world, saving humanity from evil villains, and dueling with a huge super robot that made a loud beeping sound.
That beeping sounds familiar,
thought Dave, and familiar it was. For it was not in fact the beeping of the malevolent super robot from the planet Zoltan, but instead the beeping of the bin lorry that was now outside his house. He had overslept and had failed to put the bins out. One job Dave jumped up, filled with panic. He ran downstairs, screaming incoherently. "Did you not put the bins out?" shouted Sandra in utter disbelief at her husband. But Dave had no time to reply. He was too busy shouting "bastard" while scrambling to unlock the front door, all the while as the bin lorry inched further and further away from his house. Finally opening the front door, he grabbed his overflowing bin by the handle and set off down the street after the lorry, running as fast as he could. "Stop!" he shouted.
"She'll bloody kill me!"
His man-tits were now flapping in the winter breeze. The lorry driver noticed him in the rearview mirror and cruelly teased him by briefly applying his brakes before zooming off over the horizon while throwing Dave the wanker sign out of the window. Dave ambled back to his house, shell-shocked. Dragging his unemptied bin behind him, he was a mere shadow of a man, and through his miserable walk of shame came a voice chirping from across the street. It was John from number 58, standing there with his muscular frame on display.
"You should have put them out last night,"
said John smugly.
"I had mine ready and waiting since just after lunch."
"Oh, fuck off, John," said Dave.
"Now, there's no need for that, is there?"
reasoned John, before adding,
"By the way, your dressing gown has come loose."
Dave's droopy bollocks were now on display for the entire street, who were all staring and smirking as he dragged his unemptied bin back to the side of his house. As he hastily covered his shriveling modesty, he saw his wife standing outside the front door. To say she looked angry was an understatement. She couldn't have been more furious if someone had shat in her smoothie. Dave tried to blame John from number 58, but it was no use. It was all his fault. He trudged back into his house, a failure, a loser, a letdown. Over the next few days, Dave and Sandra's house began to resemble the Monday morning after a music festival, as it filled up with boxes, cans, and miscellaneous shite of all persuasions. Indeed, the rubbish spilling out of his back door could be spotted from Google Earth. After a week, he discovered a pair of students on a gap year who'd been travelling and got lost in his kitchen. It took Dave 7 weeks to notice that Sandra had left him. It took another 2 weeks for him to realise she'd moved into number 58, where John from number 58 was now banging her like a shithouse door. Good night!